Welcome to Champagne Problems Podcast. I am your host, Robbie Shaw. Join us as we explore mental and emotional well-being, physical optimization, and the journey to discovering your highest self. Champagne Problems is brought to you in proud partnership with Bond Buzz, the alcohol-free social spirit. Coach Cy Alexander, welcome to part 2 of the Champagne Problems Podcast.
Thank you, Robbie, for being here. I really enjoyed part 1. Let's hope part 2 is as engaging as part 1
lives
was.
up. I think it will. I've got some topics that we're going to go deep on, and you know the way I see it is I went back and watched our interview, and it is so good. I so enjoy listening to you, and you have such a calming yet intriguing way of telling stories. I hang on to every word, and your stories are so rich and wise and you know, exciting, especially for me as a basketball guy. You know, this is just really fun for me. So I went back and watched the part 1, and you know, we covered a lot of kind of timeline stuff, and it was, you know, your career, and some stories along that. And today I would love to go a little more personal, if you're open to that.
Yes, sir.
I know there was a few things we didn't touch on that I wanted to. Around family and kind of personal growth and experience coming up the way you did in the South, and you know all those things that are gonna kind of naturally come out in this conversation. So I'm looking forward to hearing about all that.
Ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it. All right, so we're just gonna start right on. We're just gonna go in.
Yes, sir.
So my first kind of topic is around your career being inside the HBCU system. And while I understand from our first conversation that some of that was circumstantial, it wasn't always desirable to stay inside that system for your entire career, or almost your entire career. But as a result of that, now looking back, how did that shape and mold you as a man?
Well, kind of
Let's
going
go back.
back.
Let's go back.
I remember one of my very first conversations I had with Leonard Hamilton, who was one of my mentors. Leonard offered me 2 job opportunities as an assistant when he was at Oklahoma. Leonard is currently the head coach at Florida State University. Was an assistant associate head coach at University of Kentucky with Joby Hall for a long time. Got the head job at Oklahoma State, then the head job at Miami, and he offered me the top assistant. I was, at the time, the head coach at South Carolina State. But one of the things Leonard said to me in helping me understand how to navigate my career was, he said, right or wrong, sometimes if you're in the HBCU world, you get pigeonholed in that world. As if you don't want to cross over. And many PWI athletic directors will see you as such.
Rightfully or not.
Rightfully or not. That's how they will view you.
Yeah.
And that was so true. I had a conversation with Coach John Thompson, the late John Thompson, who was also one of my mentors. And he said, you shouldn't go back and be an assistant because you've proven yourself as a head coach. Someone will give you an opportunity. And I had a lot of chances, but I never got that call to be Ohio State, Old Dominion, Southern Illinois. And I talked to you about the Southern Illinois story, American University, University of Miami. So what I'm basically saying is that it is not necessarily true that a guy who's in the HBCU world is satisfied in that world. Obviously, just like anybody else, he wants a shot at the next level. But because there is a perception that, and like we said, right or wrong, that you're satisfied in that world, and that's what I had to fight my entire career. And I learned something once I got out of coaching. I got at A&T, they put me in a position of as an athletic administrator I was named director of donor engagement. And so one of the first things I had to do was go to the NAFTA conference, which was held, I will never forget, it was held in Dallas. And it's a conference of athletic directors all around the country.
Yeah.
And when I walked into the big, I guess the initial meeting for 500 or 600 athletic directors around the country, something dawned on me that I had coached all these years. But when I walked in the room, there was about 90% white men, 10% women, African Americans, and other minorities. And it just dawned on me, the reality of what you were dealing with during your coaching career is right in this room.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with your ability, your lack of ability, your anything. This world of athletics and moving up and getting to a Ohio State or getting to a Georgia Tech or wherever is dominated by white men.
There's a race barrier.
It was a race barrier
question.
that you couldn't fight it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it was. So what I learned was that you make the big time wherever you are. You make the best of your situation. And when I got back into coaching, again, I understood that it wasn't necessarily a racist thing. It was just what it was. It was
sure.
It was
systemic.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
that's the catchword.
Right. It's systemic. That's in every part of life
across athletics.
Right.
Beyond
athletics. But it hit me that day in this room that your chances were diminished based on the people that made the decisions were all in this room. And it was, like I said, if it's 500 people in there, 90% of the folks in that room were white men who right or wrong, had interactions with those like them, so to speak. And I'm glad that it's changing a little bit now. Not as much as probably it should, but at least, and you said something in our first interview, was that the guys that are getting an opportunity now to work at PWIs, stood on your shoulders. You paved the way, even though you never got that break that you were hoping for. But guys, because you did what you did, are able to now go ahead and get some jobs at PWIs who didn't have nearly the resume that I had. And you just deal with it as you were born too early, But you look at everything as there's a reason that the way things happen, and you just have to be able to kind of handle it, get knocked down and get back up and keep grinding and stay positive. I heard a statement that I used in a speech the other day on an interview, and it said, "Wrong is wrong, even if everybody is doing it, and right is right, even if no one is doing it." I thought that was so powerful. Wrong is wrong, even if everybody is doing it, but right is right, even if no one is doing it. And that's kind of how you have to try to handle your own life. Do what's right, treat people right. If you feel like you've been slighted, deal with it and keep moving. And that's what I learned in the and people and now you're getting I'm getting a lot of accolades now as being this HBCU pioneer, and like this is what I always wanted.
Right.
That wasn't necessarily the case.
Right.
But it played out that way.
Mm-hmm.
So now you try to make the best of the situations that are coming your way, and particularly, people wanting to, if we get this documentary going and being able to tell the whole story of HBCU, and one of the things with the podcast, we named it after the book, Beyond the Backbook, or we changed the subtitle to Inside the World That Shapes Our Culture. And that's what I want to do is one of the things I've always said, Robbie, that the difference between working at a PWI and working at an HBCU was exposure.
Mm-hmm.
You get it more now because of streaming and all the different networks and this and that.
Access.
But access, exactly. But you didn't have that back when, we were rocking and rolling in the 90s and the early 2000s, 80s, or what have you. So again, being at an HBCU now is not as limited as far as your exposure as it was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, thank you for that. That there's so many ways we could go with it, and I do want to stick inside of the race aspect because I know how powerful it is to hear the experience, and I love the fact that your documentary is going to dig deep on that and really call it expose or just make aware of the reality of all of this.
Right.
And when I mean, I am a white man. I as much as I grew up in public schools and played basketball, and my friends were of different races, and I like that about my experience. It has given me insight into people's lives that I care about, and I think that is the key to it all.
Right.
I think often you see people who are homophobic, who are perceived racists, and it's like, really the fact is they just don't know the other person.
Right.
And maybe they're not open to knowing the other person, and that's a problem in itself. But when you do know someone who's gay or who's black or whatever it may be, someone different than you, and you really know who they are, you've been in their kitchen.
Right.
You know who they are.
One of the things that I think athletics does, it breaks down barriers.
Yes, no question.
From my 9th grade year on, because I went to segregated schools up until about the 9th grade, all black schools in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But when we were exposed to, when integration came and I transferred to Parkland, and now my teammates were white, and some of my closest friends are white. Not because they're white, black, or whatever, but because we went through wars together on the court.
Teammates, man.
Teammates.
Brothers.
And to this day, I'm very close to guys that I played at Catawba College with, white guys that are doing really well in life, but I really believe that sports and athletics, that's one of the areas where you don't see a guy's color. You see a guy, can he help us win? Mm-hmm. Or if you're in the armed services. I've never been in the armed services, but I would like to think it's the same kind of bond, because that's real war. Mm-hmm. That's real. You got to have
trenches.
My back.
Right.
You're
talking life.
Yeah, right. We talking about sports here, but we talking about life. But I'm saying that I think that sometimes people who don't have that opportunity, and not necessarily who have it, maybe they didn't choose to do that because everybody's not into sports and everybody's not into whatever. But I just feel like one of the reasons that I'm the way I am, as far as my beliefs and as far as the way I'm built, was because of sports. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've been doing since, elementary school. The competitive nature, the understanding of winning and losing and grinding and not quitting. because obviously we talked about my father and pushing me as a young person, but being able to get, I think as an adult I'm pretty liberal as it relates to getting along with everybody, whether you black, white, green, gay, straight, whatever the case may be. And I reflect back on that because of my experiences as a student athlete, as a person that played sports with, I don't know if I told you this story. I went to, and I might have told you in our first session. Went to the Duke basketball camp, and did I tell you
What
this?
Coach K said to you?
No.
Okay.
This was I was a student. Me and Paul Cloud.
Gotcha.
We in 7th, 8th grade, and we were the only two blacks at the Duke basketball camp. Vic Bubas was the coach at Duke at the time. Hubie Brown was an assistant.
Wow.
And the former head coach of the Detroit Pistons, he's now Chuck Daly.
Chuck Daly, yeah.
Chuck was a part of that whole Duke. He was an assistant.
That makes sense.
Vic Bubas, Hubie Brown, Chuck Daly, all were. That was my first introduction to those guys, not knowing who they would become.
Yeah.
But
wow.
I came back from lunch, and on the piece of, it was two blacks in the whole camp, maybe 200, 300 kids. Me and Paul Cloud. Paul is he lives in Winston-Salem right now. We were teammates for a lot of years. There was a sign on the door. It said, "N-word, go home." And I tore the sign down, and I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't tell Paul. I didn't tell my parents. And I don't know why. I don't know how I even processed it back then. I didn't go to one of the counselors. I didn't do anything. I just saw it, tore it down, and kept moving. But I'm sharing it now.
You didn't give it the attention that they were seeking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You didn't, I mean, I'm sure it hit, but you didn't give it the attention.
Yeah, but I don't even know if I've ever even talked about that before. But that was at the Duke basketball. It said, N-word, go home. And who put it up, I don't know. But these were middle school, junior high school kids. Yeah. We were in the 7th or 8th grade at the time. And but that did happen. Yeah. And that was probably my first exposure to racism.
That was going to be one of my questions. Yeah. What was one of the first times that you felt that?
Second time I felt it, I was a freshman at Catawba, and I walked into a German, never had German, but we had to take a foreign language. I took Spanish in high school, but I enrolled in a 101 introduction to German class. Walked into classes, maybe 10 people in the class, 12 people. I was the only black. And walked in the room, I can remember it like it happened yesterday. The professor looks around, and his first words out of his mouth, he says, "Welcome to the class," or whatever he says. He says, "I know for sure that one person in this room is going to fail."
God.
That's exactly what he said. He says, "I know for sure."
You're looking around
right.
Who is it?
You're right.
You.
That one person is going to fail.
God.
After class, I immediately went to my head coach. He's deceased now, the late Sam Moyer. And I told Coach Moyer what was said. And he told me to go to see the dean of students, a guy by the name of Bill Hall. Both of these guys were white and good guys. And so I go see Dean Hall. And he said, because the statement was made, he couldn't go into the department and chastise the chairman of the department because the guy may not have been talking about me.
Right.
But
right.
he said, my suggestion to you is to drop the class.
Mm.
And that's what I did. I never went back. But those were two probably in the 7th or 8th grade at the Duke basketball camp that, you know, I was confronted. And all I wanted to do was play basketball. You know, I didn't see. And we were two of the better players in the camp. You know, and that might have had something to do with the, you know, we were two of the better players. I never forget that. And that was N-word, go home. Tore it down. I don't even remember. I don't think I said anything to anybody. And then when I walked into my freshman year and the professor looks around and the first thing out of his mouth was, I know for sure one person is going to fail.
I'm surprised that there aren't more experiences growing up as a black male in the South.
And I tell you, this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I had moved back to, well, it was longer than that now, when I got the head coaching job at A&T. So I come back to North Carolina. I hadn't been in North Carolina since 76 when I left to go to coach at Howard University. I was been all over the country, but not back in North Carolina. I come back to North Carolina A&T, and I started coming to recruiting and coming to Winston-Salem. And I ran into one of my old teammates, and this white guy, and he saw me sitting in the stands and came over, and we dapped it up and this, that, and that. Hadn't seen me in a long time. And he said, man, I want to say this to you now. You know, this is 30 years ago when we were in high school. He said, man, there was some bad stuff that they used to say about you. I was one of the first blacks in the Key Club. That was like a part of the Kiwanis Club deal, but it was called the Key Club. And I was one of the first blacks to be asked to be in the club. And, you know, I was a pretty big basketball player and had a pretty good name in the school. So, you know, we would have these meetings and go to different. He said some of the guys hated, but it never came across to me. And I don't know, he may have been lying. I don't think he was, but you know,
well, you would say that.
Yeah. But he said, man, there was some guys, man, that hated that you were a part of that. And I just said, really? You know, like, okay, and what else is
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, and 30 years later,
Right.
you know. But so it may have been subtle stuff that you don't know about, but because, and I had one of my best teachers was a white lady. Her name was Dorothy Johnson. And you could say she was a real liberal white lady. She taught us from 60, taught English. And I don't know if she had an affinity for black people. I don't really know her background because she was my teacher, so I don't know any. But man, she would call us, you know, we had like 3 or 4 black guys who were really like the stars of the team, and she would call us in and really make sure that we were on top of how we carried ourselves, how we presented ourselves, how we spoke, because she said, you guys are going to be representing this school, you're going to be representing your families, and she was a big sports fan, and again, and I'm sure I haven't seen Miss Johnson since, you know, but she was my favorite teacher, and she was a white lady who really went out of her way to make sure that us 4 or 5 black guys really understood how to present and how to be able to stand up in this white world, you know.
Yeah.
And again, she would come to the games, and she was just a big fan, but she was also someone who wanted to make sure that we understood that the challenges that we were going to be faced with and this was 1970, 71, 69.
Wow.
But she was probably my favorite. And I didn't stay in contact or anything like that, but just through those 3 years because I might have had her 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior year, as my English teacher. And she was just a person who I would say was very, very liberal, and was very.
She sounds wonderful.
She was.
So let me ask you this. Often in these conversations, you'll hear that mission of hers and your acceptance of it is somewhat perceived as conforming. Conforming to the white culture in order to appeal to, in order to fit in order to be accepted. And then there's the other side that's not who I am.
Yeah.
That's not who we are.
Right.
Why do I have to do that? So where in your career did you, I mean, that's a conflict I'm sure you faced all the time is I got to be like them just so I can get ahead?
Right. Well, you know, and a lot of what was instilled in me came from my father as it relates to, my father went to Winston-Salem State University to get his undergraduate degree, but he got his master's from the University of Connecticut. And so he was exposed to, you know, being on an integrated world in the North. I guess this was in the, you know, early 50s, I guess, when he was at Connecticut. I don't remember when now. But my point was, he always tried to instill in me that you got to be better than your white counterpart, or you're not going to get a chance. And you better understand. You better understand how to navigate the system. And I tell you what, my father, and this is something that I used to get ticked off about why he did this. My father had a master's degree, taught school, was well respected in the community. But in the summertime, his summer job, he worked as a shoe shine guy in a barber shop. And he told me he would, because he would, you know, go and shine shoes in a barber shop. And he said, I do this for several reasons. One, I'm making good money and it's not income, you know, it's just, you know, what you get.
Sure.
But he says, two, I learned what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Because the mayor would come to, this is an upscale barbershop.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all white folks that got their hair cut in there. And he said, I learned what they're thinking and what's going on and what I need to be investing in and what I need to be, what's the next thing coming down the pike so that I can tell you. And
Wow.
as a child, you don't, you know, you just like, yeah. But as I look back on it, he was kind of ahead of his time.
He was ahead of the game, yeah.
Because, you know, I'm saying you stooping yourself to be a shoe shine guy.
He's like, I'm not just a shoe shine guy.
There you go.
I'm doing my research.
Right. And he would say, I hear, you know, the different type of things that coming down the pike that, you know, the brothers ain't gonna know, but I'm gonna know because I'm getting it from the white dudes. You know, and he would always say, man, you gotta be, it's just like, as you notice, one of the things I try to present myself correctly. I'm trying to be like when I was 2 hours ahead of time the first time we was, you know, I'm never going to be late.
Yeah.
If I'm late, then something
has
happened for
right.
real. And I'm disciplined in that regard. One of the things that I have a whole bunch of sayings, and one of them is discipline is an orderly process by which you set out to reach a goal. Discipline is an orderly process by which you set out to reach a goal. Discipline is not me being coming at you mad and this and just overbearing, but it's teaching you order. It's teaching you how to organize, how to be, and that's what I try to present to the student athletes that I coached, knowing that it's bigger than basketball. Yeah. That I've got to try to help you get in position that 10 years from now you'll be able to lead your family, or be a pillar of the community. Some of them I got to and help. Some of them I didn't, but I feel like, as a matter of fact, I'm here in North Carolina today because this weekend at South Carolina State, they're honoring, it's called Coming Home Weekend, and they're honoring my 5 championship teams at South Carolina State on Saturday. They play Morgan State. And it'll give, I think, about 50 of the former players are coming back. It's going to give me an opportunity to see guys that I hadn't seen who are men now, who've gone on to play basketball, gone on to be educators, principals. One guy went to jail. It's all kinds. But I'm looking forward to seeing all of them. But it's in the world that I lived in. And getting back to what your original question was, I didn't want to be like a sellout.
Right.
But I also learned from my father, if you're trying to get ahead, this is what you got to do. It's just that simple. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do something. And either you're going to do it the right way and get ahead, or you can hang out with your boys and smoke dope and do this and do that and be doing the same thing, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, the guys I surrounded myself with, my teammates, they were all good guys. And they all, like right now, our starting 5 at Parkland, Mike Grace, one of the top African-American lawyers in North Carolina from Winston-Salem. Paul Cloud, an educator. Lester Irving, works for Nike. Tony Grace in the construction business, and Cy, basketball coach. And we started 2 years together, went to 2 state championships, never won it, but they were good guys. And we're still not like overly close, but we still communicate. And if I did a book signing back when my book came out in Winston-Salem, 2016. 3 or 4 of them came to the book signing, to support me. So I think a lot of it, Robbie, has to do with also the people you surround yourself with.
Sure.
If you surround yourself with thugs, then you're going to be a thug.
Right. If
you surround yourself with good people, you're going to emulate what they do. And so, again, it wasn't that. I just tried to make good common sense decisions. I was black enough to be black, but I also knew if I needed to go into that white world, I knew how to and that really shaped me as I got into coaching in the world when Cy Alexander, started being named to all these boards and being named to the different academic enhancement committees, and where, you walk in the room and there's, 20 people and 17 of them are white, power players in the sports world, the Krzyzewskis of the world and the Roy Williams of the world. And I tell you who I really got to know when I was on the board, because I used to hear bad things about him and that he really wasn't a good guy. John Calipari.
Mm.
You know, I think because he had that incident with John Cheney. I don't know if you remember that or not, when Cheney went after him
Oh, yeah.
at a press conference.
Oh, yeah.
So there was, in the black world, the black coaches world, Cal was like, he's about himself and this and
Yeah.
that. I sat beside John Calipari for 3 years in a row on the board of NABC board. One of the nicest people I ever got to meet, and he treated me with respect. He's Calipari. We would be in this true story. We'd be sitting in meetings, and they talking about the state of basketball and the state of college athletics, and Cal would be drawing up plays on a little piece of paper, and he slide it over to me and say, "What you think?
What you think? Is this gonna work?"
Yeah, is this going? Stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So it was again. To answer your question, I just wanted to make sure that I was who I was, but I was probably as good as at being able to be a chameleon, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whatever I needed to be, in whatever circumstance I was in, then that's who I was.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so rich, Coach. I the things I think about are, I inevitably, when I speak to people, and often these conversations are around personal experience, and it can be a wide range of personal experience. Often it's some level of adversity,
Right?
Whether it's a sickness, an accident, a race issue, all these things that define people throughout their lives. And then when they come into their later years and have this message and this mission to go back and teach people that are younger than them what the experience was like and how you can apply that to your own life. That's what, this is just a very rich and deep experience of yours that you took on, lived, navigated effectively, and are now coming back and saying, here's what I did, how I did it, take it or leave it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And not to take away from any race experience, but man, it's powerful.
You have to, and a lot of times you have to try to see everything not through your eyes, but try to see them through the other person's eyes. And that's hard.
Very. But you have to try.
Right. And that's kind of how I try to navigate the whole. I tell you, one of the things that happened to me, I don't know if I shared this with you in the first, but when I was a young assistant, I was and I got this reputation as being the top historically black college and university assistant back when we were assistants. I don't know if I was any better than the next person. What I was I was given the opportunity. My head coach, the late A.B. Williamson, used to send me to the top recruiting camps in the summertime, like 5 Star, for instance, Howard Garfinkel.
God, I remember him.
Right,
He was
right,
mean as a snake.
But listen to this story, Robbie. This is when Tubby Smith was an assistant, when Leonard Hamilton was an assistant, when Oliver Purnell was an assistant, Frankie Allen was an assistant.
Everybody was coming up.
Yeah, we would come up, but I was the only HBCU assistant in that circuit. And so, that's how I got the reputation to be the top HBCU assistant. And I don't know if I wasn't. I was just exposed to that world. But every night, and if you went to 5 Star, you probably remember this.
I did.
Every night after the games were over or before they got ready to play the All-Star games, whatever, Garfinkel would announce all the assistant coaches that were in attendance. In the very first chapter of my book, I talk about that. And the only assistant that wasn't announced was Cy Alexander.
No way.
True story.
Wow.
Al Skinner, former coach at Boston College and University of Rhode Island, played with Dr. J, who Al was kind of like he was a little more aggressive than I was, and I'm kind of laid back or whatever. Al came to me one night and said, "Man, why don't you go say something to that dude, man? Slighting you like this." Because the brothers were aware that Cy's here. I just got my name called, but I'm at UMass as an assistant. He's at Howard as an assistant. Is that the reason that the quote unquote Garf, the guru of college recruiting, and why is Cy's name not being called?
Mm-hmm.
I never said nothing about that. And what I write in the book was, I never said anything, but I was going about building my resume and recruiting and doing my job and let the chips fall where they may. I wrote that in the book. But I never had my name called as being in attendance, because they would name because all these guys were assistants. These are head coaches, the guys that went on to be head coaches at, predominantly white institutions, because they were assistants at the time. And that's what Leonard was talking to me about, saying, man, you're going to get pigeonholed
mm-hmm.
as a guy who doesn't want that. And that wasn't true at all. It just that's the way it was perceived.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily perceived like that now, but it was then. But it's still hard now, but not as hard. But yeah, my name never got called. My name never got called as being in attendance.
The perception of not wanting to, call it advance.
Right.
Why? How would that be true? Why would no one want to advance?
What logic?
That doesn't make sense.
Logic would make you think that that's what you would not want to do?
Do you think it's something about like black pride? Like, I'm proud to be black, and so I'm going to represent the black colleges, and they're going, "Oh, you're proud? Well, we're going to keep you there."
Let you be proud.
Yeah,
there.
you can be proud over there.
And the thing that I say, I don't know, to answer your question. I wish I knew. All I know is that you took the situation, and I say this all the time. If a person can coach at an HBCU, he can coach anywhere, because you don't have at the problems that you have at an HBCU, as far as resources, as far as exposure, as far as being felt relevant. Mm-hmm. You don't have any of those issues. Yeah. As now, what happens is back in the day, I don't know if it's like that now, but back when I was an assistant, the black assistant wasn't seen as a coach, a real coach.
Yeah,
assistant. He was seen as the recruiter. Okay. Go get the black guy. Mm. He's the bag guy, the bag man. Mm. He's doing the underhanded, the unscrupulous stuff that was, see, the NIL that's going on now, that you're paying people, you're paying them legitimately now. Well, the same thing was going on in the 80s and 70s, but it was just
illegitimate.
It's just illegal now.
Right.
And see, the black assistant, that he was deemed in that role.
To do the dirty work.
To do the dirty work. I mean, these are facts.
Yeah.
If you sit down and talk to, a black head coach now that was an assistant back in the 70s, he'll tell you. I mean, he may tell you, but I'll tell you, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And I always I liked recruiting, but I also knew I could coach. And I wasn't going to be just a recruiter. You know, it's like I've had a chance to attend some high major practices back when I was assistant and I was in town, and one of my guys who was working at a high Power 5 school to come by practice, you know, because we may be going to the same game later on that night. And I'd come sit in the stands and watch practice, and the black guy making good money, but basically he was just a high-level manager because he wasn't allowed to say anything. Nothing. You know, you go through a 2-hour practice and you standing there, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
Because at Howard, when I was assistant, it was just 2 of us, and that's the thing that I got 2 of my former players at Howard who went on to be high-level coaches. Dennis Felton became the head coach at the University of Georgia. And Mike Jones, he's now the head coach at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. But they have coached all at high levels. And they talk about, they used to tell me, they said, Coach, we didn't realize, because, you know, Dennis being at Georgia, he's got 5, 6, 7 assistants. Mm-hmm. He said the job that you and AB did at Howard was unbelievable. It was just 2 of us. And Robbie, those 11 years, at Howard shaped me as much in the professional world as anything. I'll tell you why. I had to learn every aspect. It was just 2 of us now. 2 coaches, the head coach inside, recruiting, being a scout, being an academic advisor, being a confidant, being mentor, you name it, I was for 11 years. And I gained a lot of respect all over the country because Howard was good at that time. We kept losing we lost to A&T 7 years in a row in the MEAC championship game. Can you believe that? The same 2 teams went to the championship game, and we beat them the first time, and they beat us 7 straight after that. Unfreaking believable. But being on the campus at Howard University, which in those days, and it's still probably one of the top 3 or 4 historically black colleges and universities, but in the 80s when I was there, it was the premier HBCU. You could walk on campus and you could see Muhammad Ali, or you could see Bill Cosby. You know, they would all, if they came to D.C., they at some point in time would come, you know, on Howard's campus. And you know, with Kamala Harris having, you know, gone to school there. So, you know, being able to be exposed to the elite of the elite as far as blacks were concerned. You go to a seminar and a major politician would be speaking. So for a young person who was, you know, coming from the South, being able to be exposed to a lot of the things that I was exposed to, I really, really, truly enjoyed my 11, because I went from 22 to 33 at Howard.
Your age?
Yeah, 22 to 33. And you know, that's when you form who you are. And, you know, I had a wife and ended up had a child. So I had to really grow up in then, you know, the social life in DC, man, you know, things that you're exposed to. It was just probably, I'd say, one of the best times that's when I got a chance to be exposed to people like Bernie Bickerstaff, who at the time, and I used to call myself the Black Bernie Bickerstaff, because Bick was the assistant coach with Dick Motta.
Yeah.
For the Washington Bullets at the time. And I would go out to Fort Meade every preseason and go to the Bullets camp. I'd be one of the only black guys in the building, because I was eager to learn and watch how they did that. And it was at the time, NBA, obviously has grown to what the NBA is, but at that time the Bullets had Dick Motta and Bernie Bickerstaff, and I got a chance to get to know Coach Bickerstaff and watch him, and so I said all that to say that experience in Washington really shaped and gave me more confidence and then I got a chance to learn how to coach, and that's how the name Coach Cy came about, because I had players when I was 22 years old who were older than me, and they said, "Well, can we call you Cy?" And I said, "Well, why don't you just say Coach Cy?"
Yeah, a little more formal.
Yeah, but that's how. And I took the job, and I might have told you this story, making $7,500 a year at Howard. Mm-hmm. I had to be a substitute teacher, a permanent substitute teacher at Easton High School, to help supplement.
$7,500 a year.
A year. $7,500. And check this out. This is gonna really blow your mind. I think I might have told you the story. We go from my first year, which was Coach Williamson's second year. His first year, the team was 9-19. His second year, my first year, we take that exact same team and we go 19-9, a complete turnaround. And the athletic director, the late Leo Miles, who was one of the first black NFL officials, he sees, I think, the promise in me, and he gives me a $10,000 raise. So I go from $7,500 to $17,500, and I go out and buy a BMW.
Oh, we made it.
We have made it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Wow, Coach. Oh, my goodness. Do you think it's, I look, your stories, your experience, there's definitely a generational aspect. I mean, you're coming off the heels of desegregation, right, and right, some attempts.
Right.
And of course, there's more money. There's just more of everything now. So right, that includes opportunity, right, and right, different paths people can take. But we all still see it. The white man is holding the power position, and they're not going to give it up. No. Nobody gives up a power position. Right. Not, that's the hard part, is you look at this and it's like, how is it ever going to systemically change until that top of the pyramid changes? Well, the top of the pyramid ain't giving up the top of the pyramid.
It's a constant fight. It's a constant battle. I think that we've got to continue as African Americans to continue to try to push people into the decision-making process. People that are in position.
Leadership roles.
Leadership. I mean, it's good. Like you look, I was out in Chicago this summer. Reverend Jesse Jackson is a great mentor, and we got to be very, very close when I was at North Carolina A&T, because he's a graduate. Started at University of Illinois as a quarterback, wasn't going to see time at Illinois as a quarterback, so he transferred to A&T. I don't know how many people know that story or not, but I got to be close to Reverend Jackson. But he's now suffering from Parkinson's disease syndrome, but he still has a very sharp mind. It's just very difficult for him to articulate, to speak. But he sent me to he said, "What do you need for the documentary?" And I told him what they needed. So he sent me to 3 or 4 of the power players in Chicago that have supported Rainbow Push. One of the people that I had the opportunity to meet through Reverend Jackson was Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren is the president and I don't know if I know he's president, I don't know if he's CEO, but president of Chicago Bears.
Got
Black guy. Brad Holmes is the general manager of the Detroit Lions, North Carolina A&T graduate. I'm using these 2 guys as examples of people who are in the sports world, are in positions of decision making. And just like I told you the story when I walked in that room and saw 500 athletic directors and 90% of them were white, you got to be able to, and it's hard, but it's the glass is breaking a little bit for African Americans to get into some of these roles. And like you said, you know, the white man is not going to give up that seat, you know. I mean, you know, why would he? You know, it don't make sense. But it is something that we as African Americans got to continue to strive for. It's just like the First Take. I think they do a really good job of, obviously Stephen A. Smith has broken down a lot of barriers in his ability to articulate, and a lot of people don't like Stephen A. for he's very opinionated, but he's also very smart.
Very.
And he has done a good job of mixing and giving former professional athletes a chance to come on and present themselves in roles of articulation, of being able to analyze sports, and which has led them to opportunities for podcasts and things of that nature. But at the same time, you know, he's got you know a white co-host in Mali, and then you have your Dan Orlovsky and Jeff Saturday guys. Yeah. So he's done a good job of mixing who he brings on. But my point I'm making is that you've got to be able to, when you get these opportunities, be able to articulate and present yourself as an authority on whatever your subject is. And that's one of the things that I'm doing now, trying to I've got the opportunity, and I might have told you this, to go speak in Las Vegas on March the 4th at the CXO 2.0. It's an international business conference, and I've been selected to be a guest panelist on. My topic is elite mental fitness to become an unstoppable leader. And I'm really excited about this opportunity because it's an opportunity to show myself beyond the sports world as a leader, and how you become a leader. And this is a business conference, and to have been chosen to be one of the guest speakers, it's in Las Vegas at the Luxor Hotel, March the 4th through the 6th. So this is something I'm really excited about and looking forward to, because you know I'm going to be in a world that's totally different from athletics. But being a leader is being a leader, whether you leading athletes or whether you leading folks in the business world, because there's certain ingredients that you got to have to be a leader. And I think I have those, and I think I have the ability to share, God willing, with whoever that audience will entail, as what it takes to get your company from point A to point B. You're trying to win the game,
Yeah.
which I tried to do for 40 years as a basketball coach.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very honored to have been chosen to be a part of this conference. And again, you take, as an African American, whenever you get a chance to do something, you got to represent. And you got to do it at the highest level that you can do it at. And again, I go back to what my father said. You know, everything kind of reverts back to, you know, to that and what's in you. And that doesn't just, you don't get that in you when you're adult. That's presented to you when you're coming up. And so it's you know, it's a constant grind. It's a constant grind, and it's probably not going to get, you know, it's never going to be easy.
No.
And if you think it's going to be easy, then, you know, you got another thought coming.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you just keep grinding every day.
Well, congratulations on that selection.
Thank you.
To speak at that conference. That is, I mean, beyond honorable, and I love and fully agree, and I think is pretty factual, the overlap between athletics and business.
Right.
I mean, you are leading teams, yeah, and sure, but athletics is specific to, you know, a goal and a strategy, but so is business. I mean, you know, you've got your department leaders, and you've got your goal and your strategy to meet certain.
I used to, when I was head coach at South Carolina State, I met a guy by the name of Bob Cook. Bob Cook is a former basketball, white gentleman, multimillionaire. He's a former basketball player at the University of Nebraska. He was the CEO of American Yard Products. Okay, they make Briggs and Stratton lawnmowers.
Okay.
Mr. Cook, you know how you do an interview and you talking about X, Y, and Z and what it takes to lead a team. He's a sports enthusiast, so he was reading an article on me on a plane. He gets, after he reads the article, he has his secretary. I don't know Bob Cook from Adam. He has his secretary or administrative assistant or someone call my office, and he had a plant in Orangeburg, where South Carolina State was located. He asked his administrative assistant, said, Mr. Cook has read an article about you. He'd like to meet you. And he's going to be in Orangeburg. Said, could you come out to the plant and so forth and so on? Fine. I go meet Mr. Cook. He's an imposing figure, 6'6", 6'7", white dude, played basketball. And so he was a big basketball fan, but didn't know me. He just read an article. We get to be very, very close. Mr. Cook has me speak to his mid-level managers. He had like 5 plants all across the country, Nebraska, South Carolina, Georgia, I forget wherever. But I would go in the summer and speak to his mid-level managers about leadership, teamwork, simply because he read an article about Cy Alexander. Then he thought so much of me that he wanted me to coach his son, Chad. Chad was I'm a big proponent of shooters because I could shoot. You know, so I like guys that could shoot.
It's an art.
It's an art, yeah. So I ended up coaching his son. And one of the things for a few years, South Carolina State, and I can only imagine, and I talk about this in my book, of how it's done at the University of South Carolina, the University of North Carolina. You know, you coming from, and I'm obviously was a big proponent of Dean Smith, and Eddie Fogg was a very good friend of mine. But we had one major supporter because Mr. Cook became a supporter of South Carolina State basketball. You know, we started taking charter flights, and we, you know, my wife and daughter would my wife was a school teacher. If we played in New York, she'd fly up on a private plane with Mr. Cook and be back home that night. Wow. You know, and but my point is, you know, we had one of those at South Carolina State that supported the program simply because Mr. Cook read an article. I just only imagine that I'm sure that the Power Fives have 25 of them kind of folks.
Sure.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's it's not, it has nothing to do with anything other than you're getting exposed to, you know, you got guys, multi-gazillionaires that, you know, graduated from Michigan or graduated from Duke or graduated from wherever. And historically black colleges just don't have those kind of representatives. You may have one or two. Yeah. And then the issue is it's generational money, generational resources. Usually the person from an historically black college and university, it's his first time. So he doesn't have it where he can support at the level that, say, Bob Cook was. Because, you know, you just now getting it.
Right.
And you got to do what you can to take care of your family and put them in position to, whereas, you know, it's generational, it's long, it's inherited, it's continuous. So that's one of the things that you're working towards as historically black colleges and universities, and that's one of the things I hope this podcast can be able to tell the story of what it takes. What it's just like right now, North Carolina A&T has jumped from the MEAC, where they were dominant, to the Big South. Then they went from the Big South in 1 year, where they were okay, weren't great, to the CAA. They're getting killed in the CAA, crushed. Right now, the basketball team is 0-10 and 4-20, and it has nothing to do with
talent.
Yeah. It has everything, and nothing to do with whether the guy can coach or not. But it has everything to do with, I'll give you an example. College of Charleston, they're offering, and they're in that league. And I was fortunate.
CAA?
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to coach against John Kress, one of the legendary coaches. He was a coach at College of Charleston. They beat us some, and we beat him some. But he built that program, and it's now one of the premier upper mid-major programs in the country. But they're paying for NILs $500,000 a kid. A&T is maybe paying $20,000 a kid. So I walk in, it's not even about, and I told this story the other day, it's not even about going in trying to sell your program. You go in now to a home visit and you write on a napkin, you know, this is what you're in. You know, you slide it across the table. The kid, mom and dad and kid
slide
look
it
at
right back. You better rewrite that.
And slide it right. That's all it's about.
Yeah.
So if the College of Charleston is sliding 500,000, and you sliding 20,
who you gonna get? Yeah. Well, I mean, that speaks to so many different things, yes. Right? I mean, just the cyclical nature of keeping it down. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and that's and see, it's going to be interesting to see how the NCAA, how Congress, how whomever can rein it back in. Because the horse is out the barn now.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Well, it just becomes whoever got the most money gets the best. But I mean,
no, you never see a kid, like, for instance, if a really good player is at North Carolina A&T, a really good player where he can get you 20 and 10, he ain't gonna be at A&T the next year.
Right.
Because
Somebody's going to come offer him a bunch
Carolina
of money.
or North Carolina State or whomever is going to take him and say, okay, this kid may not be good enough to be a starter but he's a heck of a sixth man or seven, or whatever the case may be. So a lot of people have become a little bit disenchanted with college athletics.
Well, it's more unfair than it's ever been.
And the fact that there is no loyalty.
Oh, yeah.
There's no integrity. It's like it's free agency in college athletics.
For children.
Right.
I mean, they're going to go where the money is. It's not, like you said, it's not about the mission and the essence of it.
You look and you say, okay, Charlie Scott, you see him as a freshman, you see him as a sophomore, you're a loyal Carolina fan, and you look forward to seeing Charlie Scott, for the next 3 years or whatever.
No more.
No, Cooper Flagg will be gone from Duke.
He'd be gone now if he could be.
It's just, so it's going to be very, very interesting. And obviously, I don't have the answers, but to see how the NABC, I was on the board, I understand a lot of what's happening with that, but how the NCAA and how Congress, how they gonna figure this thing out, man? Because it is out of control. And I don't trust me. I don't begrudge these students, athletes getting paid. I do think there needs to be a cap.
Sure.
What that cap is. Now the cap is whoever's got the most money.
Yeah.
That's the cap. Because if you can give $2 million, why let me ask you, do you think, Robbie, these kids are going to class? Come on, man. With virtual and online
and money now.
And money.
No.
It's really
sad.
It really is. It really is when it comes down to it. It's a tough situation, man, because it's not college basketball or college sports anymore. It's semi-pros. Really,
it's just business.
It's business.
It's capitalism.
That's what it is. That's
exactly.
I
mean, we are seeing capitalism
taken over
in all areas of our country.
Yeah,
it's just it's ruining the authenticity, the
of
genuineness,
anything.
the essence of humanization.
Yeah.
It's taking it away.
Yeah, because my whole thing, and I got really good players to come to play for me at the various institutions that I coached at, and was built on relationships that I developed with the parents and the relationship that I tried to build with the student athletes, that I was going to make sure that I was going to do everything I could to develop you, one, as a man, as a student, and as a basketball player. So that 4 years from now, when you walk out this door into the real world, you will be able to be proficient and be able to handle everything that's going to be thrown at you, and be able to successfully be a man and raise a family and go out and get a job and be able to hold yourself accountable to this is what life is all about. Mm-hmm. It's not about that anymore. It really isn't, and that's sad, because it's now about, and I heard Deion Sanders say, and I appreciate him saying it, that he doesn't, when he goes into a home, he don't want to hear about the NILs. And I don't know if that's real, I don't know if it's not, but this is what he said, and I hope that it is. Because he's coming in talking the same stuff that I'm telling you I'm talking about. I'm going to make your son X, Y, and Z. And if all the parent want to know is, what is my NIL is going to be, then he's walking out the door.
Mm-hmm. I don't want that kind of kid.
I don't want that kind of kid. And Deion may have the cachet to do that because he's Deion Sanders.
Sure.
And I think he's real in that regard. I heard him say it on just last week when they were doing the first take from New Orleans at the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about whether he was going to go to the pros and this and that, and he was talking about that particular situation. But in a lot of these instances now, it is purely money. And again, I don't begrudge a student athlete from getting paid, because with the corporate sponsors and this and that, the coaches have been getting paid, millions of dollars over the years.
On the backs of the athletes.
On the backs of the athletes.
Right.
But at some point, it just needs to be a cap. And maybe there needs to be levels of Division One.
Mm.
Maybe the Power Fives that can afford the $1 million NILs just play and have their own,
Yeah.
Maybe, and then the mid levels should be able to, if you're in the $100,000 NIL range, and then if you're in the 50 to below, and everybody get a chance to play for a championship fairly. I don't know if it'll ever come to that. Because of whether the corporate sponsors would buy into something like that. I don't know whether they.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it at some point it comes down to viewership,
right?
Right. I mean, you've got to have butts and seats.
And see, I think the avid fan that's the avid fan for a mid-level division, they're gonna watch.
They are. They want to see a fair fight.
They want to see. We got a chance to win. It's almost like I watched the the FCS in football. Not the FBS where they had but they've been having the playoff system in the football championship series. They've been having that for years, where you get 16 teams or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they got the viewership. They had in North Dakota State or those schools out in Montana. They've been kind of ruling that whole, because I watched it with some personal interest this year, because Tennessee State, where I coached at, they made the playoffs this year out of the OVC. Eddie George has done an excellent job in his 3 years as the football coach there. But they had nice crowds and TV packages. So obviously they got the viewership and they got this. I don't know whether something like that should be looked at on the basketball side. I don't know, but it
might be inevitable.
It might. You just never know. But because the one thing you can know is that the big boys ain't giving up. That ain't happening.
No.
And one of the things that the ACC needs to do, you being an ACC guy, they're going to have to come. This is the weakest that the ACC has been in basketball in a long time. I mean, what I'm hearing is that the NILs in the ACC are not comparable to the NILs in the Southeastern Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about potentially 10 to 12 teams in the Southeastern Conference going to the NCAA tournament. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's because of the money and because of the teams.
Yeah. And football, right?
Yeah,
football brings in all those donors as well, more donors.
Yeah. Well, football, SEC football has been that way for
forever. But
forever.
It's trickling over now.
It's trickling over to basketball, and it's taken away. Like I'm listening to, as I was driving in from the airport, I picked up a Duke basketball game on the radio. Duke is playing Cal in the ACC conference game. How crazy!
And Stanford,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. How crazy is that?
I know.
And I'm sure it's about money.
Oh yeah.
But my question is, how are the non-revenue sports making it with that kind of travel.
Right.
You know, the volleyball team and the track team, you know, going way out to California. I mean, obviously football, men's basketball, women's basketball. But think about, you know, I'm sure they're doing it, obviously, but that has got to be a package where when the Carolina volleyball team goes, they probably got to stay out there 2 weeks to play, you know,
Few different,
few,
yeah.
few different schools. And that, you know, again, it goes back to being able to have the academic support system. You probably got 5 academic advisors on a road trip with the team to making sure that the young people are not getting behind academically, you know, or what have you. So.
Yeah. Well, Coach, we're getting up on another hour and a half. When we doing part 3? Well, you know, I wanted to talk about family. I worry that family is a topic that I want to devote more time to. I know that your journey inside of your family life has been a rugged one, due to some disease and some diagnoses and subsequent death. And I mean, instead of going through maybe the stories of each of those, let's talk about the importance of family.
Well, it means the world to me. As you well know, cancer has been big in my family. My father died of a brain tumor at 55 years old. I was 18 years old, sophomore in college. My mother, and I hope I have her genes, she lived to be 94 years old. Her goal was to make 100, but she didn't. And she just basically died of old age. They said dementia. But my wife, who had just turned 60, she died of colon cancer. And it was my mother died in June. We won the MEAC tournament in 2013, my very first year at North Carolina A&T. I was on top of the world professionally. We go win a first-round game in the first 4 against Liberty University, go on to play Louisville when Rick Pitino was there. This is the spring of 2013. The following year, 2014, June, my mother dies. September, my wife died. My wife was so sick that she couldn't make my mother's funeral. They had to stream it into her hospital room. She dies. I get prostate cancer.
Same year?
Yes. And I tried to coach 2 more years, but I really wasn't mentally or physically able to do it. That's why I got out of coaching, because I was still wanting to coach, but physically and mentally I wasn't able to do it. Then, good Lord has healed me. I'm doing well, doing, several different things as it relates to broadcasting and speaking and meeting great people like yourself and so forth, and hopefully get this documentary going and the podcast. And last year, my daughter was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was a major, this was not this past Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving a year. That was 23 going into 24. Was diagnosed with breast cancer. And Robbie, it's been a tumultuous 12-month journey. My daughter graduated from Howard University with a business degree, a communications degree, got a master's from George Washington University, has done well in the entertainment business world, worked for the Falcons for a while, and is into hotel industry as a in the food industry and this sort of thing.
Great. She in Atlanta?
Yes, she's in Atlanta. But then she got breast cancer. And this past year, and I tell you what, man, I was in Atlanta probably more often than not. I spent probably 75% of my time in Atlanta because she's a single mother with 3 kids. And cancer does not discriminate. In that room when she's getting her chemo, there are black women, white men, young, old, and and I give her a lot of credit because she fought. She lost her hair, but thank God she's cancer free. She's cancer free. She's in her last 2 steps now. She's got her last set of chemo pills that she has to take will be March the 16th. Then she will go to do this reconstructive surgery for her breasts and everything. But she's gone back to work. She's feeling good, exercising, doing the things that she's been a proponent. She's been asked to go around the country being an advocate for breast cancer survivors, speaking and so forth and so on. So she's really has met a lot of people, and she's just been blessed, and God willing that she does not, cancer doesn't come back on her and doesn't come back on me, it's been a can you believe a family? Everybody in the family got cancer at one point. No. My wife died of cancer. I got cancer. My daughter has cancer. But God.
What was your wife's name?
Cecilia.
Cecilia Alexander.
Yes, and
your daughter's name?
Joy, Joy. And I have two twin granddaughters that are 11, and a grandson who is about to become a senior in high school. Excellent swimmer. We was on our first recruiting call this week. St. Vincent's University in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, right outside where the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a swimmer, and he wants to go. There's only one, and I'm just finding this out. There's only one historically black college and university in the country that has a swimming team. I didn't know that.
Really?
Just one, and that's Howard. Where my daughter went, she played volleyball there, and I coached there and got a master's degree. He'd like to go to Howard. I don't know whether they're going to offer him, but he's getting.
They better.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. But
legacy.
But he's getting offers. In fact, Catawba, where I went to school, is looking at him. He's getting a lot of Division II offers from some really elite PWIs, and so he's a fine young man, and we spent a lot of time together when I was coaching. He would come and stay with me, and I tried to make him a basketball player, but it just didn't work.
The harder you try, the further they go over there.
But yeah, family has been, I pray every day that my daughter and I both can continue to be survivors, and anybody that's going through the cancer, it's horrible, and I hope, Robbie, that at some point in time we can come up with a cure. I mean, we can send people to the moon and do this and do that, but we need to figure out a way to eradicate this disease, man. But it took my wife out, and it definitely gave a big scare to me, because I had prostate, and nobody even knew it, that I had it, because I wanted to keep it a secret. In fact, I told the people at A&T that I had a hernia operation.
Oh my God! It was just a little hernia.
Yeah, right. Right.
Well, Coach, that's. I'm sorry for your loss, but I can tell you're very proud of everybody that you still got going in your family,
Yes.
and that's it's lovely to see. It's an honor and a privilege.
It's an honor to be here, man. I appreciate your support of me, and I hope we can continue our relationship and build on some of the things we talked about and keep it moving, man.
I don't even think we need to hope. Let's just do it.
Let's do it. God bless you, brother.
You as well.
My man.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.